Niners got to go to Buffalo this week and play a game in 30-degree winds with the snow coming down just to save their season. Or is it over already? We'll discuss that and more next on Cohn and Krueger. What's up? Welcome to Cohn and Krueger. That's Larry Krueger. I'm Grant Cohn. We're undefeated. The Niners are 5-6. They're coming off 2 straight losses. They got to go to Buffalo. Buffalo's pretty good. It's going to be very snowy, and a lot of the Niners' best players are injured. Other than that, the Niners are doing really well this season. Larry, do you think the season is over, or can they salvage this and make a deep playoff run somehow?
Well, it should absolutely be over, but the NFC West, everybody's within 1 game. So theoretically, it's not over. I mean, by all intents and purposes, it is. They're 5-6. They're not playing well. They haven't won. Have they won 2 in a row? I mean, it's been a long time. And it's just, they've had a rough year, but I would say kind of by default, because they do still have 2 division games left, one against the Rams, one against the Cardinals, and there's only 1 game separating the entire division. They got a shot. They still got a shot of making it to the playoffs, but it really feels like the season's over.
Yeah, even if they make it to the playoffs by winning the division with the 10-7 record or whatever they finally get to, it just feels like the kind of team that would lose in the first round, maybe by a lot, to a superior team, kind of like what we saw this past Sunday. Like, at what point is this team going to I think the phrase of the season is lock in. At what point is this team going to lock in and tackle like it cares or play a full 60-minute game? I mean, the fact that we're at week 13 and we haven't seen that yet makes me feel like even if they get all the breaks, they're not going to do anything with them.
Yeah, the beginning of football is run the ball, stop the run. They can't do either. They were running it great until they brought McCaffrey back, and now Shanahan's fallen in love with McCaffrey and forgot that he had Mason and Garendo in a top 10 run game, and now suddenly they don't have a top 10 run game. They're 20th with McCaffrey, so they can't run it. They really can't stop the run. And it doesn't look like anybody outside of Malik Mustafa wants to hit anybody. Everybody looks like they want to just corral everybody and kind of direct them towards the sidelines and maybe sort of get a hit in a group of guys and maybe knock them down. But the only guy who's actually out there playing for keeps is Malik Mustafa.
So I guess I'm trying to think of it like from David Lombardi's perspective. Like, how would he sell this? That there's hope left, because that's what he does.
Looking good. Everybody's fast. Everybody's breaking tackles.
Well, Greenlaw's coming back.
CMC, and in Dave's world, everything's hunky dory right now.
Yeah, in Dave's world, Christian McCaffrey looks just like he did last year. Deebo Samuel hasn't lost a step at all. Greenlaw's coming back. Could be in a couple of weeks. All they got to do is hang around until week 15 or something, and then lock in mid-December with when Greenlaw comes back. And maybe Hargrave comes, but when Greenlaw comes back, is Greenlaw going to change everything? We keep waiting for like one player to come back and change everything. McCaffrey hasn't been able to do it. Can Greenlaw do it?
I mean, Greenlaw's going to help. There's no question. I mean, we haven't seen Dre Greenlaw fully rested and healthy at this point in the year ever. So I'm actually pretty excited about what he can contribute, but he's still coming off an Achilles, and who knows, what he's going to bring to the table. And it's asking way too much. They were already a year ago asking Warner and Greenlaw to do all of the heavy lifting in the run D, and those guys were just so damn good at what they did that they covered for everybody else. But this run D thing has been a problem for multiple seasons now. They didn't stop the run last year in the preseason. They didn't stop the run last year in the playoffs, and that was with Greenlaw. And the fact that they ran it back this year, and we're like, oh, yeah, we'll take off Greenlaw and we'll plug in Devondre Campbell, and we're still a Super Bowl. I mean, you're delusional. They were delusional in thinking that Campbell was going to replace Greenlaw. So it's asking too much to ask Greenlaw to save the season, but he should help.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the fallacy is the Niners aren't a player away. I think what's wrong with this particular team is the coaches are doing a very bad job across the board. I mean, obviously Brian Schneider's not going to be here next year. Nick Sorensen's doing a bad job. The Niners defense is terrible in the red zone. And the Niners offense is terrible in the red zone. Like the Niners are moving the ball, whether they have Jordan Mason, Brandon Allen, they can move the ball out there. It's just when they get into the red zone, they can't score no matter who the players are. And I feel like that's got to come back to Kyle Shanahan. So if they're going to lock in and actually win the division in a few playoff games, Kyle, Sorensen, and Schneider are all going to have to do a much better job down the stretch.
They can't even just get their best players on the field. So I don't really have a lot of hope that they can scheme to beat an opponent that's talented because they can't even get their best players on the field. JP Mason and Garendo are both averaging over 5 yards a carry, and neither have been seen for the most part, in any kind of meaningful way since McCaffrey came back. McCaffrey, I mean, they brought McCaffrey back, and their running game has regressed. So Shanahan can't seem to get his best backs on the field for whatever reason, loyalty, blindness, I'm not sure what. Forrester can't seem to get his best offensive lineman out there because he keeps telling us that Jake Brendel's great, but Pro Football Focus keeps telling us that he's fucking awful. Yeah. So somebody's lying, all right? Yeah. And only one of them has a good relationship with Jake Brendel, so we know who that is. So, Forrester can't get his best line out there. Shanahan can't get his best running backs out there. Sorensen can't get his best linebackers out there. It's
debatable if Shanahan got his best backup quarterback out there.
You can debate. You can debate that if you want. Is Shanahan playing the best quarterback he can play? But they're not.
The guy that he played had 9 healthy fingers.
Right. Brandon Allen had a broken index finger or middle finger.
Yeah, it was in a splint and he fumbled twice.
But I mean, once again, I'll say this about that one. I don't have a real strong opinion on that. I mean, I watched every practice and every preseason moment and everything like everybody else, but I don't have a real strong.
Yeah, because Dobbs would have lost that game for sure as well.
I mean, and Purdy would have lost that game.
Yep.
And Dobbs is 3-11. So yep. I just have a hard time going, put in Dobbs, because I know he's 3-11. That's
fair.
But maybe Dobbs would have been better. To me, Dobbs and Allen are basically the same. They're just a different. They have a little, maybe Dobbs a little bit higher ceiling, little lower floor. Maybe Allen's a little safer on the floor, a little lower ceiling. But I knew Shanahan, and you did too. We knew Shanahan. Lynch said it this morning. He was asked about by KMBR why Allen over Dobbs. He's like, well, this was a decision that we made, and he paused, and I'm like, I know he's going to say back in July, and he's like, back in training camp. It's like they did. They had what they thought was a battle between Allen and Dobbs. They decided they wanted Allen, and that's it. There's been no movement in that battle since camp, so it's going to be Allen.
All right, we'll come back to the offense in a minute, but we're talking about, can the Niners actually save their season and do something with it now that the NFC West is so close and the Cardinals just lost? One of the things about this team is that they're awful at tackling. A couple of years ago, they had the number 1 defense in the league. They were the best tackling team in the league. There was nothing schematically advanced about what the Niners were doing in 2022 under D'Amico Ryans. They were known as the team that would get all 11 players in the frame for the tackle every time. They played the hardest, and teams that played the Niners didn't win the next week. That identity is gone. They might be the worst tackling team in the league. PFF has them graded 31st out of 32 teams in tackling.
Yeah. Well,
why?
If you've noticed the last, let's say, 4 or 5 games, there's almost always a defensive back who's leading them in tackling and not a linebacker. And that just tells you that their teams are completing way too many balls. Guys are getting to the 2nd and 3rd level. They're running right by Campbell and Warner. Warner won't admit it, but he's gassed. Campbell has lost all lateral agility. D. Winters actually can run and has lateral agility, but he hasn't earned the respect of Sorensen enough to get on the field. So you have Winters as the highest graded PFF guy a week ago, only to barely play in this last game. So they used to have Greenlaw and Aziz and Warner, and now it's Warner and just dudes. And you're not going to be as good, and they're not as good.
I'm looking up missed tackle leaders for the 49ers. Devondre Campbell has 12. Diamador Lenore has 11. These are missed tackles.
Yeah, which means you got to get there, and that's not what Devondre's best at. He's probably missed more than that. I mean, there was a play in the flat, Grant, in the Green Bay game. This was the most ridiculous play of the game. They had a back who was blocking in the backfield, who leaked out into the flat, and they flipped it to him. Devondre Campbell was 18 yards down the field, and he clearly had the flat. And he didn't even encounter the guy until the guy had already run for like 12 yards. So, I mean, Campbell's lack of speed on the second level is just absolutely crushing this team.
Agree. I still feel that this is a new development. Like PFF had him as the fifth best tackling team last year. Losing Greenlaw hurts. But I think this is a direct reflection on Nick Sorensen and Brandon Staley. I don't know if it's related, but Brandon Staley's Chargers defenses were bad at tackling. And it seems like you get what you emphasize. And it's not like this Niners defense is particularly advanced in terms of pressures or disguised coverages. So it doesn't really do anything particularly well. It doesn't get the most out of their talent. I hate to blame the coaches like the players did, but I don't see where the Brandon Staley impact is helping. It's not here.
Well, their issues on D are more about players than coaches, in my opinion. But I think it's worth noting that the Chargers got rid of Brandon Staley. They gave when Brandon Staley was there, they gave up 60 plus points in a game to the Raiders. And now with Jesse Minter, who had never coached a minute in the NFL as a coordinator before, came from Michigan with Harbaugh. Now suddenly the Chargers are giving up like 13 or 14 points a game, and they got one of the best defenses in the league. So I don't know what to say about Brandon Staley other than the team that he went to hasn't been appreciably improved, and the team that he left is dramatically improved. I'm not sure what that says about him.
It doesn't say something good. Okay,
Right.
So let's talk about Nick Sorensen now. Do you think the Niners will fire him? I mean, we got 6 games left. Assuming this keeps going the way it's been going, what do you think they'll fire him? And who do you think would be a good replacement if they do?
Yes, I do think they'll fire him. I mean, Shanahan was saying, I've never seen worse tackling in the first half of a game than I saw. That's not a ringing endorsement for Nick Sorensen. Why don't you buy a house here? I would say Sorensen is going to be gone. And as far as, why, I mean, I don't know. I believe the issue's more players than scheme, but I mean, where's the creativity? Where's the changes? Where's the adjustments? I don't see any adjustments. And then you look at their fourth quarter scoring, they're coming out in games and they're giving up enough points in the first quarter to be like a defense that gives up like 14 a game, which is great. But by the time they get to the fourth quarter, Grant, they're like a defense that's given up 35 a game, and that's not even good. So, I think Sorensen is out. As far as who's next, do they want to keep their wide 9 with Kasarik? They probably do. So it's probably got to be somebody who is willing to inherit their D-line coach. I don't know who it would be. It would have to be, the guy that would make a lot of sense would be Jim Schwartz, because he runs the wide 9 and has had a lot of success running the wide 9. So if they want to keep their front, they got to go to a defensive coordinator that kind of embraces the wide 9. And I don't have a catalog of guys up top of my head, but I know Schwartz is one of them. And I don't know that Kyle Shanahan and Schwartz are buddies or anything. So I don't know that that's viable, but he would be an accomplished guy who does like the wide 9.
They could try to bring back Robert Saleh, although I'm not sure that the Niners would be Robert Saleh's first choice. They could try to bring in Jeff Ulbrich. It seems like they were interested in bringing him in this past year, and the Jets said no way. Although it's not like Jeff Ulbrich's doing a great job with the Jets right now as the interim head coach. I don't know how good of a defensive coach he is, but I know that he and Kyle were on the same staff in Atlanta, so they know each other.
And he's an ex-Niner.
And he's from Santa Clara, I think.
I don't know about that. He played at Hawaii. He was a good Niner, and he knows the Yorks, and a lot of these things are factors that we don't even consider. But yeah, I mean, I think Ulbrich is he would be on the short list.
The reason I'm like leaning towards blaming Sorensen and Staley for this tackling issue and this effort issue on defense is like last year with Steve Wilks, they ranked 3rd in points allowed, and people still pointed at Wilks as like, yeah, but the effort's an issue. And that's a reflection of him. They're not buying in, right? We said that all the time. They're not bought in. Look at the way they're jogging around the field. You can't have that. That's a fireable offense. Well, I mean, that's like true even more now. I mean, the effort is even worse now. Fred Warner's missing tackles. Nick Bosa's missing tackles. Like, your best players are the biggest defenders. So I don't know. Doesn't speak well. Like you said, don't buy a house right now, Nick.
No, and also, I mean, I got to see a lot more urgency from this 49er organization across the board. I mean, give you an example. The Lions today cut James Houston the fourth. He's a pretty good pass rusher, all right? He's a better pass rusher for sure than Robert Beal. But are they going to cut Robert Beal and sign him? No, they're going to stay with Robert Beal. So it's like they're kind of in this mode now where I don't want to say they're kind of throwing their hands up, but they're no longer in this we're building and we're going to turn over every stone looking for incremental improvement until we have the kind of team we want. It's like, all right, we're going to draft, we're going to sign guys, we're going to go to camp, and then we're just going to kind of fill in around it. And it's like Sam Aquinu is a nice player for them. They signed him last year right around now. And they put him on the practice squad. He didn't play, but now he's been a good player for them this year. So all I would say is keep going. I mean, don't quit. I mean, you got guys who are failing. You're not getting anything out of Robert Beal. You should be absolutely aggressively looking for a roster replacement. You only have 4 or 5 defensive ends on a team. Your defensive ends are your ability to speed up the other team's quarterback. If Beal hasn't done anything as far as pressures, sacks, hurries, quarterback hits, and it's week 12, it's time for him to go, and it's time to go get somebody else who can do it. So I kind of wonder if they've kind of given up because they didn't do shit at the trade deadline. I mean, didn't do a damn thing. They badly needed defensive end help. They didn't do it. They're sitting with Beal now. He's not producing. And they act like, he hasn't produced in any of the games up to now, but he's sure as hell going to produce going forward. No, he's not. So it's like I kind of get this feeling that on some levels they've quit. And that's
such a great point, because it's like all year we've been like, when's Kyle going to adjust? When's he going to show some creativity? When's he going to break out some new stuff in the red zone? When is he going to get 2 running backs on the field together? Like, none of that has happened. There has been no, like, it seems like we have more of like a drive to fix this, to get this season going than Kyle does. It's almost like Kyle looked at Christian McCaffrey going down and not being himself, and him being like, well, we're screwed. I'll give him the ball, but it's not going to work. And I have no more. We're screwed. Sorry. There's no point. That's kind of his attitude the whole season. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's got a lot more confidence than I've detected, but it doesn't feel like he has much confidence in him, in this team.
If I was JP Mason, I'd storm into Kyle's office and be like, what in the fuck is going on here? I just ran for 15 yards and the next 4 plays were pass plays. And the next time I touched it is in garbage time in the fourth quarter. What am I even doing here? If you don't want to use me, cut me. Guess what? I got friends around the league. I know the other talent in the league. I know that I can be something significant elsewhere. Either play me or trade me. He's a young guy. He's respectful. He ain't going to do that, but he should.
I agree. Zach Rivero says, could Epic Sunday Night Football snow shootout game reignite Niners?
They're going to be ignited, all right. They're going to be lit up like a cheap cigar. I mean, that they're going to be smoked like a Macanudo in my golf bag, at Tilden on the back nine. I mean, they are going to get destroyed in this game. They're going up against a Bills team that's won 6 straight, that has scored 30 plus, I think, in like 5 straight, and they're giving up like 15 a game. The 49ers are going to get beat like 38-3 in this game. This is going to be an absolute bloodbath.
Larry's on fire today. Kevin Inferno's become a new member. Thank you very much. Cayman999 says, hey, gents, thanks for a great show. Why won't one of you ask Kyle about not using Mason in a way he can't dodge? Reference Ryan. Media room too nice and tippy.
Well, I will be asking this question. Okay, I will be asking, and I have asked this question, and you know that, and I have asked this question. I said, why are we not seeing? I asked him last week, are we going to see CMC and Mason? Are we going to see CMC and Garendo? And I got the kind of, hey, you mean 2 running backs at once? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, oh yeah, well, we've done that before. We'll do it again because your receivers are not worth putting on the field outside of Jennings. So do it again. You've got You've got three
True.
pretty good running backs, and your one, Garendo's a game breaker. I mean, I'd line up Garendo as a wide receiver and run him on go patterns as many times as I possibly could until he was just totally out of gas, because at least he's contributing. He's creating space. He's running off the coverage.
Ezio Sanchez says no one talks about the loss of Adam Peters enough. It does seem like the Niners were much more stable as an overall organization when he was part of it, but it's still early. All right.
They had a great draft without Peters. I think that's probably why there hasn't been a lot.
That's
of
true, but I wonder if
Peters'
Peters' influence was beyond the draft. It was just like organizational competence.
Yeah. Oh, I think he was
Possibly.
probably another grounded voice as far as personnel.
Yeah.
For sure.
All right, let's check out BetUS, the sponsor of the show. The number one, well, in our hearts, the number one casino and sportsbook. Buffalo Bills, 7-point favorites. That means if you're new to gambling, the Niners don't have to win this game. If you pick the Niners, all they have to do is lose by less than 7 points. You don't seem to have much confidence that they can do that this week.
No.
And Larry, neither do I.
Bills big. They're going to cover that thing before the anthem.
I'd have to say so too. And it's, I'm not any more confident that Brock Purdy's going to play this week than last week. It seems like the Niners kind of would like him to play, and they're saying that they don't know why he's not playing other than he's in pain, but they have no idea when the pain's going to go away. They hope it will go away this week, but they hope it will go away last week.
Right.
So,
I mean, the plan is to have him out there Wednesday, see how he feels, and then go from there. And if he doesn't feel good, it's Brandon Allen. But I'm not 100% convinced. I mean, they're going to score more points with Purdy, but I'm not convinced that they're going to hang within 7, no matter who quarterbacks.
What about Eagles-Ravens? In Baltimore, Ravens by 3.
I like Ravens there. The Eagles are playing really, really well, but the Ravens are great at home, really good at home. The Ravens could fall behind, and I still like the Ravens in that game.
Okay, how about Rams on the road in New Orleans? 3-point favorites.
I'd lean towards the Saints there. It just seems like I'm not a big believer in what the Rams have left.
Yeah, they seem pretty done. Let's see if we can do one more. The Seahawks on the road against the Jets, -1.
I like the Seahawks there.
Their defense all of a sudden has become very good.
Well, you know why? Because, here's the thing. It's amazing how this all works. They were horrible beginning of the year. Horrible. Yeah. Why? Because they had Terrell Dodson and Jerome Baker. Then they traded for Ernest Jones IV, who was really good with the Rams, and I have no idea why the Rams traded him in camp. And then they just added Tyrese Knight. Tyrese Knight is a really underrated 4th-round pick out of UTEP, a linebacker. He had 9 tackles and a sack yesterday. He is a big-time guy, and that's what happens. You take guys who don't make tackles off the field at inside linebacker, replace them with guys who do, and suddenly, wow, Seattle's defense is not so bad, and suddenly the Niner defense is really, really bad because they've got Campbell and they've got Fred Warner at 35%, and that's a far cry from last year with Greenlaw and Warner at full go.
Well, look, you guys want to make some wagers? Go to BetUS and receive 150% bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000 with code YouTube150. Okay. So Christian McCaffrey missed the first half of the season, comes back. He was supposed to fix everything. They didn't, like you pointed out, they didn't make a trade at the trade deadline. Why do that? What they don't need to. They got Christian coming back. And so far, I think it's fair to say he hasn't been nearly the player he was last year. How do I ask this? Is he washed? Is this the beginning of the end? Is this the end of the end? Or because he's signed through 2027. What is this like the worst contract on the team, or is he going to be able to? Are they going to be able to salvage this?
I don't think he's washed, but okay. I think like if you go and like when I went and watched it the first time, I thought, okay, he looks okay, but he's not really getting it done really. And then I went back and watched it again, and I started kind of breaking it down a little bit more inside outside, like. Running between the tackles, he ran the ball pretty effectively. It was when they asked him to run outside the tackles where he looked tentative. He lacked burst. They were beating him to the spot, and there was nothing there. Now, a couple times they tried to run wide, and it was clear it wasn't blocked right. And there was one play where you see Brendel, kind of a close up of Brendel's face. He like pivots away from the blown up tackle for a loss, and he's just shaking his head. So a lot of that's on the offensive line, but they are not running Christian effectively outside. Inside, he's still he broke off a couple nice runs. He looked pretty quick, but running to the edges, he either has lost a step or they're really bad at blocking it or some combination thereof.
Do you think that he's going to eventually regain most of the form he had last year and he'll be able to have 20 carries a game and 5 targets or more? Or do you think that they're going to have to bring in a running back next year who's similar to him and sort of spell him? Like, what is the future of the running back position here? Because it seems like Kyle Shanahan is as good as his running back. And his dad was the same way too. They're very much a running back centric offense.
They have the guys that they need right now. I mean, they literally have Garendo's a speedster. If he can get to the second level, he can be gone. Mason's a tremendous back. He was like 3rd or 4th in the league until McCaffrey came back. They still will need another back. Somebody who's got some breakaway speed.
Yeah. Maybe some receiving ability, a third down guy.
Yeah, I mean, Garendo's obviously got breakaway speed, but I mean, somebody who's got pick and slide ability and instincts and breakaway speed. It's a great draft for backs. There's all kinds of good backs in this draft, and they'll have their pick of them. I would say that's not a priority because they already have some young talent there. But what are they going to do with Mason? Are they going to trade Mason? Are they going to keep Mason? If they're going to keep Mason, I think they're all right. If they're going to trade Mason, they probably need another back. And if you're right, if the backs are big in this offense, so like I would consider going after a back earlier, not waiting so late if the right guy was there. I mean, this kid from Boise, Ashton Gianti, is just a game breaker. I mean, if you could get a guy like that, I think I would be interested early.
Yeah, it just seems like, again, the Niners have made their biggest runs, not really when the quarterbacks have been the hottest. It's like when Raheem Mostert got hot, the Niners went to the Super Bowl. When Deebo Samuel became a running back and no one could stop him, the Niners went far. And when Christian McCaffrey got here, the Niners were kind of unstoppable. But if he's not going to be that kind of a player anymore, and Kyle doesn't really trust Garendo and Mason or whatever the issue is, let's go subtopic. Why do you think Kyle Shanahan won't use those two guys anymore? I mean, everyone can see how good they were. The numbers back it up. Christian's not himself right now, and yet Kyle's being stubborn. Like, why do you think that's going on? It's baffling to me.
I think I know why. I think it has all to do with ball control and holding onto the ball. Garendo fumbles, Mason fumbles. They fumble a lot. Who did he love? Who did he love that wasn't McCaffrey?
Mitchell.
He loved Mitchell. What did Mitchell never do?
Fumble. Yeah.
Kyle, all offensive coaches hate guys who fumble. These guys fumble. He's not going to say it because if you say it, now you're inviting 15 guys to punch at the ball every week if you say it. If you say, hey, my guy's got a problem, hold on to the ball. And it's like that headline circulates. So he's never going to say it, but that's the reason. Those guys can't be trusted to hold on to the football, and Christian can, even though he fumbled last week.
Yeah, there's the irony.
In Kyle's mind, though, Christian is reliable, and Mitchell's reliable, and those guys aren't.
Yikes. Well, enjoy those 2.9 yards per carry. Dale says, should Kyle contact Aaron Rodgers about taking a rest in the dark room? Maybe a little ayahuasca tripping. Kyle needs a break and a puppy.
Whew. It's interesting. That is interesting. Let's just say Jed came to them and said, hey, look, this was an ugly year. You didn't go to the playoffs. Yeah. Injuries were a factor, but they're not an excuse. Guys, it's time to get back where we were. It's time to get back on that level and compete for the 6th Lombardi. And we haven't done. We've competed. We haven't gotten it done. I think he, at that point, I think, he may say to Kyle, hey, you have a couple more years now before, or he may say you have a year. You have 2. I don't know. But if he did put some kind of parameters or deadline or timeline on Kyle, one, I think it's likely that Kyle's going to be like, screw you. Mm-hmm. I'm coveted. I'm taking my ball. I quit and I'm going elsewhere. And because he knows he's going to get a job elsewhere. So there's that possibility, which I think is volatile and could happen. But then there's also what if he tells Kyle he's got 2 years to make it happen? And Kyle's like, well, I don't know if Brock's the guy. Do I want Aaron Rodgers? Do I want 2 years of Aaron Rodgers? He sure looks good at times. I think it would be a colossal mistake, but I could see them having a very hard conversation about it because Aaron Rodgers for the next 2 years you probably have as good a chance, or maybe you could argue slightly better chance to win a Super Bowl than if you stayed with Brock and paid Brock. But now things get complicated, right? Because you're going to be paying Brock Purdy a large sum of money. It's going to dramatically impact the rest of the roster. So they're going to have to, I don't know how Kyle feels about Brock at 50 million or north of 50 million. Maybe he's all for it. Maybe he's not.
If I were Aaron Rodgers, I would want to go to the Vikings.
Yeah. Or,
because like Sam Darnold isn't their choice, and JJ McCarthy may not be ready, and that defense is incredible, and they have Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. Isn't that exactly what freaking Brett Favre did too? He went from the Packers to the Jets to the Vikings. Just do the Brett Favre thing. It worked out for him. Just don't steal money from Mississippi. I'm sorry, allegedly.
Yeah. The Browns, I don't know. The Browns don't have a quarterback. There aren't too many spots. Winston. The Raiders.
Yeah, but he wouldn't want to go to the Browns. He wouldn't want to go to the Raiders. I think he would want to go to Minnesota. That's a good team.
Maybe the New York Giants.
Yeah, who wouldn't want to play for the New York Giants? Andrew Hatley says, do you think Belichick is the answer as Kyle's replacement, or was he just a good coach because of Tom Brady? I'm more concerned about the offense.
Well, Belichick is one of the greatest defensive coaches the league has ever seen. He's one of the greatest defensive backfield coaches the league has ever seen. It worked especially great with Tom Brady, and he's not a great offensive coach, and he wasn't great in Cleveland before Tom Brady, and he wasn't necessarily great in New England after Tom Brady. So you got to have a quarterback in this league, but there's nothing about, Bill Belichick is, think about it last year. Last year, Belichick had a better defense in New England than the 49ers had here. So,
and what stinks about him is, despite all of his years of experience and all of his connections, his offensive coordinator is going to stink. It'll be Josh McDaniels or Bill O'Brien or Matt Patricia. Like, he's got no one. And the reason it worked is because he had Brady. He had Charlie Weiss for a while. Like, he always had bad coordinators. He just had Tom Brady. So I think that's the problem with him. He might fix the culture. He'd have a great defense, but who's going to be coaching Brock Purdy? And why is it going to be Matt Patricia?
Right. And something tells me Kyle's not going to be like, yeah, I'll be the offensive coordinator.
No. Shyla Q says, if Brock shows out this game, would that change your thought on him as the franchise quarterback? Also, how do you think the Niners could win this game? Answer the second part first. How can the Niners beat the Bills?
Be +2 or +3 in turnovers.
Maybe if it snows so much that neither team can complete a forward pass.
Well, yeah. First of all, this game could be major advantage to the 49ers because we could see something happen here that all the motivation in the world can't get Kyle Shanahan to do. Kyle Shanahan literally had a backup quarterback on the road against Green Bay. It was screaming for a 40 carry, run the ball with Mason Garendo, Debo, CMC, everybody. It was a run some more kind of a game. And they came out and threw it all over the place. So I would say the 30-mile-an-hour winds in Buffalo could favor the Niners. It could just take the ball out of the quarterback's hands altogether, force both teams to run. I don't know that the Niners can stop Buffalo's run, but I think I could see the 49ers having some success running the ball since they have three pretty good runners, but they just haven't committed to running.
If Brock shows out this game, would that change your thought on him as a franchise quarterback?
I think that's probably geared towards you, right? Because I personally think that Brock is a top, I would say he's somewhere between 5 and 12 in that range. I don't think he's not elite, but he's also not like bottom tier. I think he's above average NFL starting quarterback, but you probably have gone south.
I wouldn't pay him $50 million a year. And my question with him is more about his durability and his repeated injuries to his throwing arm. Not so much his ability on the field. I think he's a hell of a quarterback too. If you say he's the 10th best quarterback, the 12th best quarterback, the 8th best quarterback, I'm not arguing with you. but two injuries to his throwing arm and 40 career starts. Scary if you're thinking about giving a guy $250 million over 5 years. Those are my questions. And I'm not sure if he can answer those questions in a week. We'll see. Shady Luke says, I'm a Philly guy, so maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, but in 2025, your draft strategy in the first 3 rounds should be O-line and D-line trenches. Well, that segues us into our next question. Should the Niners draft a quarterback, given that Brock Purdy's arm, his throwing arm, is injured again twice? Do they hedge?
First of all, I think the Niners should draft a quarterback, even if Brock Purdy's arm is perfect, because they're now at a spot where the only way they're going to be able to, get on the level. I mean, look at the Niners. They don't have a lot of big time players in their prime. They don't have tons of young talent. They need a reset, but what they really need is they need an injection of significant talent. They've lost out on all those Trey Lance picks. They lost out on a lot of high picks. So yeah, I would definitely take a shot at a quarterback every draft going forward. Why? Because if you can hit on one, then now you've got an asset that it could be traded for, multiple picks and maybe multiple ones. And to me, that's how you build. So, somebody in the Niner organization had a pretty good eye for Brock Purdy. That maybe, see what that guy says.
It wasn't Kyle.
Yeah, but whoever it was,
Steve Slowick.
If they like Carson Beck and all of a sudden you're sitting there in the 3rd round and the Georgia quarterback staring you in the eye, you might want to consider drafting him. One, because you're not 100% sure about the long term for Brock. 2, if Carson Beck became a great looking prospect, you could trade him for 2 1s and 2 2s, and suddenly you're back in biz and you're right there with Detroit and Kansas City and all the best teams. So they're not there now. So I think the quarterback selection could be the shortcut route, but you got to do it well. You got to have a good eye for it. That's for sure.
Yeah. I'm glad you said round 3. I don't know if it's Carson Beck. I don't watch college football. I'm like Kyle Shanahan. I'll watch some tape when the season's over. But round 3 is not too early for the Niners to take a quarterback. Round 2 is not too early for the Niners to take a quarterback if there's one that they really, really like. I don't think round 1 is necessary. I'm not saying like get rid of Brock or trade Brock, but I don't think they should give him a 5-year contract extension this offseason. If they want to offer him a 3-year extension or a 2-year extension, great. But that's still, you got to like have a plan B in case something does happen with his elbow or his shoulder again and he's damaged goods, because he doesn't have arm strength to spare. We were talking about him maybe gaining more of it. And as the season went on, it seemed like he got a little tired. He would stop throwing down the field. And those are things like the fact that he stopped throwing down the field before he hurt his shoulder is concerning to me. Like, why was that? Was it your elbow? What was it? So just the fact that those questions exist make me feel like, yeah, it's an important position. Kyle Shanahan can't keep his quarterbacks healthy for that long of a time. So yeah, bring in another quarterback, draft one.
And Brock, to me, has regressed a little bit this year as far as he's not really letting it rip the way he has. And I'm not sure why. Is it that, Ayuk is his, I mean, most of the time when he was letting it rip down the field last year, most of the time he was throwing it to Ayuk. So you wonder, without Ayuk, does he have a downfield receiver that he trusts? Does he have a receiver that can even get downfield? On this team, is Ronnie Bell getting downfield? I mean, who's getting downfield among these receivers?
If you're not throwing the Kittle or Jennings this year, it's probably not going to work out that well. And those guys one's a tight end and one's like a glorified tight end.
Right. Go to those guys in the red zone the rest of the year. I mean, you get to the red zone, throw it to Kittle, throw it to Jennings. You want to mix in a throw to Ricky, fine. But Kittle is being shockingly underutilized this year. You don't have Ayuk. Debo looks washed. JJ's relatively slow. McCaffrey's been out all year, and you're still not going to Kittle on a regular basis, and you're still using him as a glorified offensive lineman to block. I mean, come on, find another blocker and get that guy in the pattern. And you go to some 12 personnel, around the goal line, and you get a good blocker and put Kittle in the end zone and throw him the ball. Let's see if he can do it.
If Andy Reid had George Kittle, Jawan Jennings, Jordan Mason, Brock Purdy, he'd do really well. That's how I feel. I don't feel sympathetic for Kyle for having injuries. Like, You got a lot of talent. You're supposed to be creative. Other creative coaches, I wouldn't have the number one offense with this, but they would be scoring at a much higher clip than the Niners if Andy Reid were the coach, if Ben Johnson were the coach.
Ben Johnson has a lot. I mean, first of all, I'd love to have Ben Johnson's weapons, but Ben Johnson also is a very young guy, but he's also got some very creative red zone play calls. He creates space in the red zone better than any other coach in the league, based on what I've seen. It's not a scientific study or anything, but based on what I've seen this year, Ben Johnson's play calls in the red zone are spectacular, and he always creates lots of room. Now, is that the speed of his weapons? It could be. Is it the greatness of his line? It could be. But they're having tons of success, and it's a copycat league. Niners ought to try to copy as much of it as they can.
Well, last thing I want to say on this topic, if they do draft a quarterback, he needs to be mobile. Yes. I think that's, if you're going to have a quarterback who's not mobile, that's fine, but then you need to have a great offensive line. And the Niners are never going to have a great offensive line. They don't try to have a great offensive line. So fine. The Jimmy Garoppolo, Brian Hoyer, Brandon Allens of the world aren't really good fits for this team. And I think we saw it. Brandon Allen did a nice job, but when the pocket collapsed around him, which happens on this team, he has no instincts. He has no quickness. He has no feel. Brock Purdy's ability to make the first guy miss and then extend the play is like the most valuable thing the Niners offense has this right now. So I think that they can't, Kyle doesn't think that's important, but the organization has to understand it's extremely important.
Yeah, mobility. I mean, I'll say it right now. Mobility at quarterback is not just like, ooh, that's a nice little wrinkle. That is a must. You have to have mobility. The two quarterbacks I would tell everybody to go watch. One is Cam Ward, who was just here in Berkeley a few weeks ago with the Hurricanes, an amazing player. And the other is the freshman quarterback from Texas A&M. I forget his name, but he's really good. And he's fast. He's athletic. He's like 6'2", 6'3", kind of, very much like Lamar, but even with a better pocket passer. So, I mean, those are the two young quarterbacks I really like.
What do you think of Shedeur Sanders?
He's super athletic, and he's probably going to go top 5 in the draft. He's big. He's 6'2", 220. He completes a high percentage this year. I mean, he's completing 74%. He's got 30 touchdowns, 7 picks. Yeah, I like him. I mean, he's going to have some transition time. I don't think he's going to step in and dominate, but I also think that they have no shot at him because he's going to go in the top 5.
They could tank for him.
Yeah, they could tank for him, but I mean, even if they tanked, I think they're probably getting to about 6, 7. Okay. They're not going to get, where he's going to go like 1, 2, 3 probably.
Fair enough. Okay. Dale, we got you. Oh, hold on. Dale says, Larry, chances Kyle calls it quits at the end of the year. Kyle looking old and raggedy. Okay, let's get there. Gold Towel, we'll get to you in a minute. I haven't forgot you, but it's just that Dale really transitioned us nicely to the last topic, and then we'll finish the super chats. We've been discussing and arguing, should the Niners fire Kyle Shanahan? Should the Niners want a fresh start? Should they look elsewhere for a head coach? Let's look at it from the other perspective. Is it possible that Kyle Shanahan wants a fresh start? Is it possible that he's looking at this team like, man, I don't want to tie myself to Brock Purdy long term. I don't know if he's really that guy. And that Brandon Ayuk contract's awful. And that Christian McCaffrey contract might be even worse. Like, I missed it. We're screwed. This doesn't have to be my problem. I want out. Is that possible?
I mean, Kyle Shanahan to me seems like a guy who doesn't want to. He seems so impatient. Like when you see him fall behind in a game, the look on his face and the play calls on the next 5 plays are always super aggressive, down the field, attacking. We must get back. We must get back now. So you're going to tell me that he's going to be super patient with this roster that's now got a bunch of dead cap on it and a bunch of guys who can't play, who are earning money, and it's going to take a couple of years to kind of cleanse the whole thing and reset. You're telling me he's going to stick around for that? I would say no. That would be my guess. And that's also the other thing we don't know is we don't know about Trey Lance. Did Kyle pick Trey Lance against others saying no, or did he get overruled? Was everybody right at the time? Was Mike Lombardi and all those guys right when they said Kyle loves Mac Jones? Maybe Kyle did love Mac Jones. Maybe he got outvoted. And not that Mac Jones has been great, but maybe he's a little bitter that how the Lance thing came down, that maybe Lance was forced on him. I don't know. If that was the case, I could see some discontent. I also could see the 49ers coming back and saying, hey, look, you know what? You haven't had a lot of success this year. It was a down year. How about you don't have final say on personnel? How about we get rid of this defensive coordinator? How about we get rid of your special team coordinator? How about, and all of a sudden, if things start getting dictated to Kyle, does he say, you know what, screw you, I'm taking my ball and I'm going home? Because he knows that he's going to have, and it's not, people are like, oh, he's not walking away from X number of millions. Come on, that's laughable.
True.
He's going to get more money if he walks. The next deal that he signs is going to be for bigger money than the deal that he walks away from. So there's no risk on his part at all from walking away. It's just a matter of, does he want to be here? Does he like the Yorks? Does he like Lynch? Does he like the situation? Does he want to stick it out through a year or two of the reset where there might be some pain like the Rams experienced, albeit they experienced it coming off a Super Bowl win, and the Niners don't have that win. So you're going to have to go through those lumps and those publicly while the fan base is still, clamoring for that Super Bowl that you haven't won. So I would say there's at least a shot that at the end of the year, Kyle and the Niners mutually part ways, just the same way that Jim and the Niners mutually parted ways.
I could see Kyle Shanahan saying, you know what, I would like a fresh start. You know what, you guys are unhappy with me. I'm unhappy with you, or I'm unhappy with the future outlooks of this organization. So fire me. I'll take a year off. I'll go to Cabo for a year and I'll lay on a beach and I'll relax and I'll de-stress. And then I'll come back in a year like Bill Belichick's doing right now. And I'll be the number one potential hire and I'll get a bunch of money and I'll live happily ever after. And you guys will be stuck with Brock Purdy or whoever you guys decide what you want to do. Not my problem anymore. I don't know. I can see him doing that, but we still got 6 games left.
He seems like he needs a non-football cleanse.
Yeah.
That's what his face looks like. That's what his answers sound like. I think he's a really good coach. I think he's an NFL top 5, top 6 kind of a coach. But there's been mistakes here. They passed on Mahomes. They've screwed up all their number ones except for the ones that were real obvious. Bosa, they got 1 right. They got 8 wrong.
They got some bad contracts on the books for a while.
You just extended Ayuk. He's hurt. He's not going to play next year.
What's he going to be when he comes back? I don't know.
Right. And then the other one, the big one is Debo. And this is one of the topics I'm touching tonight on Niners Nightly. What do you do? To me, this is like a major, major question for the 49ers. Do they extend Debo or do they cut Debo? I know extending him sounds laughable at this point, but when you really think about where they're at, an extension for Debo might be the answer. I mean, if you cut him next year, I was looking at some of these numbers today, Grant. This is pretty amazing. If they cut him, they're going to have nearly he's scheduled to make $17 million next year, close to it. If they release him or trade him, it's going to result in about a $30 million dead cap hit.
Well, they'd have to do what they did with Armstead and do the post June 1 designation.
Right.
So that'd be the way to do it.
Yeah, and they could make the pain
and that's all because they restructured his contract this offseason, which was a mistake.
Right. So, but I mean, a lot of people are saying, well, maybe they'll extend him, in that $8 to $15 million range for like 3-4 years and, kind of wind him down. But I don't know. I mean, that to me is going to be interesting. That's a major decision this offseason. Do you extend him and try at a more reasonable rate and try to wind him down slowly? Because we know he's Kyle's favorite weapon, or do they rip the Band-Aid off, take the massive cap hit, maybe do it a little less painlessly by doing it after June 1st, but moving on from Debo? Because then you won't have Debo, you won't have Ayuk, you'll have a 31-year-old Kittle, and you'll have CMC with 2 Achilles. So your potential for next year does not look really good. That's, to me, that's the more depressing part. It's not that they're not going anywhere this year or their playoffs look like a pipe dream. It's that they look kind of fucked for next year.
The thing with Debo to me is I feel like he has to go. And like, however they got to figure it out financially, I think he's the culture of the team. The bravado, dancing before the game, not performing, and then pointing the finger at someone else and not holding yourself accountable. Like, that's like the combination from hell. You can't have that.
Yeah.
I'm the coach's favorite player. I get to be the guy in front of it, all up in the video, all in the camera's face, and I get all the credit when things go well, and when things go bad, I skirt blame and point at someone else, and I don't talk about it afterward. Like, that's gotta go. Can't have that on this team.
I was hearing a little Suge Knight there.
That's right. All in the video.
All up in dancing. The videos.
That's Debo.
Yeah,
he's the Diddy of this team.
I mean, it's funny too because some people say they can't even see that Debo's lost a step. Really? I mean, they used to run him on end arounds and he would go for 20, 25 yards. It's now going for -2 yards. Nobody notices that he's not getting there as fast, or he's not running as hard, or it's not as effective. I mean, come on, it's obvious. It's real obvious. And it
doesn't seem to affect him. Like with Christian McCaffrey, you can see that he's like eating his liver. It's really killing him that he's not what he used to be. Debo seems like he's like, I still got my burst. It's not my fault. Costa likes me. It's the special teams' fault. Like, there's something about him, the fact that he's a captain, that he's acting this way this year, that is really off-putting to me. And maybe I'm overreacting, but I think that the Niners' culture issues, the toxic nature of their locker room, he's a big part of it. I'm not saying he's all of it, but he's a big part of it. And I think that the boombox era needs to be retired. The boombox era. Sorry.
Here's the other thing I think it has to be mentioned. When you blow off the media, are you really leading? Are you the leader when you blow off your obligations? Show me a family that rewards the child that blows off his obligations. Show me the business that celebrates an employee who blows off his obligations. Is there going to be any penalty at all for him? He's there to answer the questions when they're like, Debo, you are great. Thanks, Kay. I appreciate you having me on. But when the questions are, hey, Debo, you just said, lock into the kicker, and you had a ball go right through your hands, 2 of them, one that led to an interception. Is it maybe you should lock in? Maybe you need to lock in better? No, he's nowhere to be found. He no-shows. He pulls a LeBron James and no-shows.
But it's even worse. It's even worse because he has a podcast on top of this. You don't want to talk to the media, but you want to talk to the fans about nothing. Nah, man, like, you're a football player. You called out your teammates. There's things you need to talk about, and you're like running away from them. You have your own podcast, and it's the most boring podcast in sports because you won't address the elephant in the room. If you would just talk about your play and your incident with Jake Moody and Tabor Pepper, you would have the #1 podcast in the NFL, but you won't do it. And it's a bad business decision, and it makes you look like a non-captain, a non-leader.
Well, and what's happened is, in people who don't maybe understand what they're watching as far as speed and that kind of thing, what you're looking at is, it's a totally different kind of speed to run up the field on a kickoff return than it is to catch the ball behind the line of scrimmage, make somebody miss, and then turn that into a big play. He's lost his quickness. He's lost his explosive first step, his second step. He's got gather speed now. So, if you're going to put him at kickoff return and let him take 5, 6, 7, 8 steps before the defense is on him, he will have that gather speed that all big-bodied guys have. But he doesn't have the quickness. He doesn't have the change of direction. He doesn't have the route running ability, and he never really had ball skills. So at the end of the day, we're talking about kind of a subpar wide receiver who doesn't have great ball skills and doesn't separate and doesn't beat man coverage. He's lost a lot of that quickness.
His kick return was the best play of the season for him. And I think what's really funny is that his most famous incident in the season was him getting into a fight with the specialists. And I think the proper punishment for him, and he deserves it, is to be benched on offense and to be a full-time specialist. You now get to be in the meetings and sit right next to Jake Moody, and Tabor Pepper's on your left and Jake's on your right, and you guys get to talk about special teams all the time because now you're a core special teamer, Debo. Go make the team better.
Should they strip him of his captaincy for blowing off the media and not leading the team?
No, they should have stripped him of his captaincy for hitting a teammate. That's when you do it. Forget us. Forget us. When you hit a teammate, that's when you sacrifice yourself as a captain. And the fact that Kyle Shanahan blamed Tabor Pepper for making too big of a deal of it just shows you that, Debo Samuel, Kyle Shanahan will enable Debo Samuel as long as they're on the team together, which is another reason I feel like Kyle needs to go.
Let's not confuse this thing, though. It ain't about us. We're just the conduit to the public. We're the conduit to the fans. We're just there to deliver the message from A to B. So if he's blowing us off, he's not blowing us off, folks. He's blowing you off. He's blowing the people in the chat off.
Why does Nick Bosa talk after every game? Why does Kittle talk after every game? Why does Fred Warner talk every game? Because they take their job seriously. They take their responsibility seriously, and they take the fans seriously.
The word is accountable. They are accountable. Leaders are accountable. That's why Dieter was the one who came up with strip him of the captaincy, and it seems a little dramatic. But if I can't have a captain who's not accountable, and if he's not gonna face the music after a loss, anybody can face the music. Anybody can walk outside and everybody's cheering their name. It takes a lot more intestinal fortitude to answer tough questions about failing. And that's what he blew off.
Goldhouse says CMC got the solid VW job. Got to go back for the Porsche. Talking about the German treatment he got, German engineering on his Achilles. Corey Soto says, spoiler alert, Niners will have a new quarterback in 2025. If it's Kirk Cousins, I'm going to laugh very hard. Boxing fan.
Watch be Zach Wilson.
Oh, God. Probably. It could be Sam Darnold. Boxing fan times 4. Dylan Gabriel. Who's that? Quarterback?
Yeah, I don't like him. He's at Oregon. He was at Oklahoma. He was at Central Florida. He's probably 3 years older than Brock Purdy right now. He's kind of small. He runs around. He's a good college quarterback. Don't fall in love.
It's so weird, like looking at college players now when you're trying to get ready for the draft and you're looking into their past and you're like, you went to 3 schools? Like, what do I
know.
What is that? What do I do with that?
I know.
Dale says, what tradable assets do we have? Bosa, Warner. We need more picks. How do we get them? Well, Kyle's worth a little something.
Yeah, I mean, one of my friends, Dan Cochimilio, on one of his streams, or one of my streams of the day, was trying to get the Kyle Shanahan. The Niners should trade Kyle Shanahan. Makes me wonder. It makes me wonder.
That's what Al Davis would do.
I don't know if they will get that creative. To me, if it gets to the point where they're going to separate, they won't be able to pull that off. They'll
but theoretically, could you get a top 10 pick for Kyle Shanahan?
No. I think you could get multiple picks, but I don't think you're getting a top 10. I think you're probably getting a couple 2s. That'd be my guess.
Oh, I'm okay. But once upon a time, Al Davis got 2 1s and 2 2s and $5 million for John freaking Gruden.
But he had won the Super Bowl, or he had gone to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
No, he had won the Super Bowl. Wait. What am I thinking?
Times have changed. He hadn't won. He won the next year in Tampa.
Yeah, that's right. He hadn't won yet. That's right.
Cayman 999 says, we also said don't force it. Take the checks down. All day, every day. Kim says, Larry, a couple of weeks ago on this very show, said the Niners wouldn't make the tournament. You still second guessing? I'm wrong?
A couple of weeks ago on this very show, I said the Niners would not make the playoffs. That doesn't sound like me. That sounds more like I said they would. But you know what? I don't think they're going to make the playoffs, but I do think, because here's the thing. Look at the schedule. They're going to lose to Buffalo for sure. They're going to lose to Detroit for sure. They already lost to Green Bay. The Cardinals are playing better than them. Miami looks better than them. The Rams, I mean, I think the 49ers will be lucky if they get 3 more wins, to be honest. I think they'll get the Bears, they'll get the Rams, and they'll probably get Miami. I would say it's 8 and 9. It's an 8 and 9 type season.
Dale says, what does Debo do? Boombox walk out. What else?
He talks to Kyle at practice. He talks to Kyle at practice.
Yes, he does. Brian Sinnott says Kyle needs to adapt or die metaphorically. Same in sports as in business. They need a huge clean out next year. Apart from Trent and the rookie Kmart workers on the O-line, how's that working out? Kmart workers on the O-line. Yeah, they do need some better talent.
Pooney had a bad day yesterday or Sunday.
Sexy Potato Dancer says, is Kyle carried by the legacy of his last name? Boy, What gives you that impression? El Vergudo says Pearsall equals Pettis wasted pick. Yeah, real quick before we go, what do you make of Pearsall getting put on the shelf? Even though he's out there running routes, getting cardio.
What do you mean put on the shelf? Did something
Like they
happen
don't
today?
throw it to him anymore.
Oh,
Why?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, does he? I mean, did he? I mean, how many routes did he even run? I'll say this: Pearsall looks dramatically better than Cowing at punt returning. He's got confidence. Right. He's got he's more reliable. You can just tell. You can just tell he's way more reliable. So definitely use him there. But yeah, I don't get where Ricky Pearsall is. I don't see the separation. I'm not seeing any attention. Now he's a rookie. He's gone through a lot, but he's a bust until he ain't. And right now he's a bust.
Gold Tau, Grant, give your press pass to T.O. to get at Debo. Debo really hasn't done well since T.O. said that. Stephen Draper, Debo is not 6 foot, not 6'5", quarterbacks throwing too high. Oh, boo-hoo. 49er Jeff says get rid of Kyle and get who?
That is the problem. That is the problem. It's like you cannot do what you did last time. You cannot be like, we just need to get rid of Jim. We just need to get rid of Jim. We just need to get rid of Jim. All right, we got rid of Jim. Oh, okay, now what? No. Don't
elevate Chris Kasarik to the job. If you can get Ben Johnson, that'd be great. And I know Bill Belichick has his problems, and you'd have to figure out who he's going to bring in as his offensive coordinator, but I do think he would fix the defense and the culture. So he's someone to at least consider if he's interested in the job.
I'll give you a plan. If they're gonna, I would not move off Kyle. I would stay with Kyle. I would definitely try to make some changes though, as far as personnel and that kind of thing. But if you really want to go forward, you know what the best move it would be? It might be because I mean you're not going to win unless you can somehow deconstruct the Chiefs. So I would go and offer Spags the deal to take him away from Kansas City, to just throw a gigantic wrench in their situation, and then go see who Spags can attract.
He'd probably bring Matt Nagy with him. And Matt Nagy, maybe was underrated. I mean, he did a pretty good job in Chicago where everyone sucks. I don't know.
Yeah. But I mean, don't you like the idea of trying to hurt Kansas City?
My only thing with Spags is that he has been a head coach before. He was with the Rams and it didn't go well. But that was a long time ago, and a lot of coaches didn't do well their first go around. I think he would. I'd like to know about his temperament as a leader because I know he's a hell of a defensive coordinator. I just want to know why didn't that work? And he's definitely worth a freaking interview. He's so good, and maybe he's better than he was 10 years ago.
Yeah, and
was
maybe
he the coach before Jeff Fisher
in L.A.
In St. Louis.
In St. Louis. I think so.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think he's definitely more highly thought of now.
Yeah, I agree.
And I would be very interested to see who he felt like he could attract as the offensive play caller. Because I mean, if you're going for Ben Johnson is 38 years old. He's super young. So there's got to be somebody else.
Made my day. I'm 36. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So I mean, you gotta. If you can't get a Ben Johnson, or if you were going to go to Spags and you like that Spags idea, I'd like to know what young offensive mind he would come with Spags. And then now you're talking, because now you're hurting Kansas City. Now you're damaging them a little bit. I don't know that it's as simple. I mean, you're not getting this thing done unless you can build yourself up and see them get torn down. If they just keep going, you're not catching them.
I mean, let me just look up Matt Nagy real quick. He kind of left in disgrace. He was 34-31 with the Bears, and his quarterbacks were Mitchell Trubisky and Justin Fields. He was 34-31 with essentially backup quarterbacks that he was playing with. I don't know. Something to think about. He's an Andy Reid guy.
Maybe Spags likes Bieniemy. He was there for a long time. I don't know.
Maybe him.
But I mean, Spags at least is a solid defensive coach who is they're going to need a new defensive coach, whether Shanahan stays or not. So, to me, I'd be interested in Spags if I could get him away from Kansas City. And who knows, maybe, I mean, it's time for Jed to flex, the Eddie D wallet. Eddie D would be paying huge money for the best assistants because there's no cap on it. So guess what? That's what Jed ought to do too. Go pay big money to get top assistant coaches from other teams to leave their situation to come to you. There's no cap, so do it.
Matt McEwen says Diva needs to go, tear it down, rebuild all day, every day. Kim says, I said they wouldn't. Larry said they would.
Yeah, I said they would make the playoffs. I didn't say they wouldn't.
Right.
Do I think they're going to make the playoffs now? No, I don't. I still think there's a possibility, but there's no indication that this is getting better. I don't know about you guys, but every game that I watch, they look fucking worse. So why would I sit there and project them to be better? Only a total idiot would sit there and look at this Niner team and go, hey, you know what? We're about to take off. No, you're not. You're about to hit the ground and burst into flames.
Yep. Larry, great show today. Thank you, everyone, for watching. 2,800 people in here right now. You all have great taste. I'm going to go get my teeth cleaned at the dentist.
Hey, happy Thanksgiving to you, to Pops. Man, I can't thank you enough for getting me down this road, Grant. I really appreciate you, man.
You're killing it. Thank you very much, everyone. Happy Thanksgiving. Larry, I'll see you at Santa Clara tomorrow. See if Brock Purdy's throwing a football. Take care.